show. Office Corner, she asked about.
Well, I am so pleased to welcome to this show Frank Atchley. He is somebody who's had an amazing career and has, I think, helped so many people who lost loved ones, frankly, and also probably has helped so many people in warning them what to look out for. And when I say that, he's had a long career, just retired in law enforcement. In fact, he is definitely responsible for capturing one of America's most dangerous serial killers, Gary Ridgway, who's part of a huge task force. It's 40 investigators. They work tirelessly day and night. So imagine what he brings to the table when he writes a novel, A Birthday to Die For, because of his background, all of that expertise. It's a psychological crime thriller that is out there and is, you can't put it down. You just can't put it down. And we had an off-air conversation that just left me wanting more, and I know that all of you will want to hear what Frank has to say. So Frank, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, let's talk about what made you jump into law enforcement in the first place?
Well, I was in the Navy when, right out of high school, and in the Navy I was taking correspondence course through LA Police Department, which led me to Riverside City Police Department, where I worked for 8 years, which also was one of the first times I had a confrontation with the satanic cult situation. But
wow.
So May 1 of 1964, I took the oath to be a Riverside City police officer. The oath was to protect and serve, and there is no expiration date on that. So even though I'm retired, I still feel the obligation to protect people when I can. The fact is that I was an active police officer for 33 years. During that period of time, I was a homicide investigator for 12 years, during which time I investigated approximately 35 death investigations. And I've also been a supervisor as detective sergeant on the Green River Task Force when I transferred from Riverside up to the King County Sheriff's Department out of Seattle, where I've had the exposure to investigating death investigations for so many years. I also included the Green River serial murder case where 48 women were killed in the state of Washington. I also was on the sidelines and learned a lot during the Ted Bundy investigation. So when I was on the task force and I was tying up some loose ends, I got a phone call from a doctor. It turns out she was a psychologist, and she had a patient who just that morning had called her in a panic tone saying she was going to be killed. Well, the doctor took time to talk to her to try and calm her down, but persuaded her to come directly to her office, where they talked, and it was revealed that this woman was now just 3 weeks away from her 26th birthday, the time at which she was supposed to be sacrificed in place of a baby that she had miscarried 13 years earlier. It appears that when she was 13 years old, she was introduced to a satanic cult by a foster mother. She was raped by a high priest, and as she was held down by other members of the cult, she delivered a baby only to have it be a miscarriage, and therefore she was threatened by the high priest that on her 26th birthday, 13 years later, she would take the place of her baby.
Wow. So Frank, you get that call. What do you do?
Well, it was, at first I had my doubts. I asked the doctor, did she record any of her sessions with their patient? And she had. So she agreed to show it to me, so I went to her office and watched one of the sessions. And to even complicate the issue even more, as I'm watching this woman on a seat on the couch with her legs tucked up under her, as she talked, it sounded like her voice changed 3 different times. And as I got more into the interview, I could tell that there were 3 different personalities. And that was confirmed by the doctor. What was confusing was the one personality that seemed to be the dominant one seemed to be just like I was talking to the victim and getting a straight story. But then another personality would pop in and call the first personality a liar. And then a third personality was the peacekeeper between these other 2 personalities. So the confusion was quite rapid in this investigation, and it wasn't helping me dispel my skepticism regarding the story I was receiving. But I could not ignore it. It was too risky. The woman is saying she's going to be killed in about 3 weeks. Time is running short. And if I'm going to save this gal, I've got to solve it. I've got to identify the cult members. So it was quite confusing. I had the pressure of that, had the pressure of the multiple personalities, and I had to work out a code system with the doctor to realize which personality I was talking to at the time. And that was done by holding up 1, 2, or 3 fingers to tell us which one it was.
Wow.
So I had the pressure was on me because all my experience was always, investigating the homicides where people were already dead. Now I've got a walking victim, and if I don't solve this case within the 3-week period, there's a strong likelihood she's going to be dead as well. So the pressure was on. And as I got into the investigation, I realized there was nobody I could trust. I didn't know there were so many people in our society that tend to lean that way. I was afraid to talk to just anybody, because if they did, they could maybe talk to somebody from the occult themselves, and they would find out where this young woman was at. So I had to worry about that. So the challenge was to keep her alive while I tried to identify the cult members. And as I identified certain witnesses, like the foster parent that had introduced her, I only found out that she was dead as well. She had been sacrificed. So witnesses were either dying or disappearing on me, so the investigation was even complicated more so.
Wow, and you had to be worried about a couple of things too, because now it starts to get out there, and you're investigating this. And what about your wife's safety? What about the psychologist's safety? So that was even more pressure, right?
Yes, it was, because what happened is during the investigation, the doctor's office had been burglarized, and the only thing that had been disturbed was the file on the victim.
Oh.
So it was obvious that the cult was trying to locate her, and also the file revealed that I was the investigator. The doctor, even though she was reluctant to do so, and shared that there with me, is the fact that she was violating the doctor-patient confidentiality by bringing me into the investigation. But she had done so because she sincerely believed what the patient was telling her, and she didn't have the ability to save her life without some help.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. The good news is that this ends on a happy note, so to speak. But how did you pull apart, like, just knowing so much that you had learned back in those Riverside days about the occult that had to, and sacrifices? It's real, and that had to help you in solving this, right?
It did. I had a lot of help from a detective from LA Police Department. He was assigned to work these type of cases specifically. And he gave me heads up on what to look for in that. He told me to, one of the things, pay attention to any reports of animal abuse. One of the ceremonies included taking the testicles off of a bull or a horse and using that in some type of ceremony.
Mm.
And so that was, and there were a couple of those done in the King County area where I was working. And when I got involved with this detective from LAPD, was after I was on patrol in Riverside when a door to a church had been chopped down. And as I went into it, I had another officer by the name of Al Cox help me out. We went into the church. We couldn't turn the lights on because we didn't know where the switches were at. We just had our flashlights and we're walking down both sides of the church. The church had a velvet-colored curtain, almost like rug material, hanging from the ceiling to the floor on each wall. And as we walked down there, I noticed, with my flashlight, some toes sticking out from under the curtain. As I signaled on the ceiling with my flashlight, Al Cox, my buddy, came over. When we pulled the curtain back, the guy was standing there with an axe over his head, ready to come down on us.
Oh.
So we had a big fight with him in there, disarmed him, and that knocked over several pews in the church and that. We took him into custody. But I had to book him in jail on a John Doe because he had no identification on him. 2 days later, I'm notified that he's dead. He killed himself in the jail.
That's the first time you dealt with anything like that, right?
That was my first contact with anything dealing with satanic worship.
Wow. Wow.
But all the other homicide things that I had, and then this year I get this thing on the satanic cult. It kind of blew my mind. I had to share this with fellow detectives throughout wherever I needed to, give them a heads up that this might be something they might run into in some of their death investigations.
Yeah.
Wow. And I also wanted to alert the citizens who read my book that there is that possibility, because it would be surprised how prevalent that is in our society today, throughout the world, as a matter of fact. But the investigation pursued, and I worked out several situations with the doctor and ways to hide out the victim, so to protect her. And I had fellow officers now that I had gone back in years with, who I knew were good, and they helped me also. We did bring the case to a close. I did identify the occult members and brought the thing to a close. But when I made the arrest and the booking and stuff like that, I was in my detective car heading home, and I got to thinking about it. This victim had been living 13 years, at least 13 years, in fear of her 26th birthday. And that's why she developed these different personalities. So I called the doctor and I asked her if she could get a hold of the victim and meet me. And she did. So I met him, and as I told him that, don't worry anymore, we've got the person, he's in jail, and he's going to be there for a long time. So they both broke down crying, the doctor and the victim. They come over and give me a big hug, and that I just couldn't believe it. It was one of the most satisfying things I'd ever experienced out of an investigation.
Wow, what a great story. And then it led you to, being able to fictionalize it, right? In A Birthday to Die For.
Right.
Wow.
Well, one of the things that was helped persuade me is that this was all true, as I led up to the conclusion of the investigation, was I asked the doctor if she and her patient would go with me and have the patient show me the ceremonial sites that she had been to. And there were 2 ceremonial sites in 2 different counties in the mountains. And there was always high and always within a clump of trees. And they'd cut down these trees, saplings and smaller trees, and build a semicircle around an altar. And allegedly at that time, it was where the sacrifices were being made on the altars. While looking at one of them, I saw this brown stain running down the wood on one of them. So I cut it out, submitted it to the crime lab, and it came back both animal and human blood. Now I'm a believer. I'm convinced. And then I pursued it even a little harder, I guess, and brought it to a conclusion.
Yeah.
By the way, when I brought it to a conclusion, this name, the High Priest, that title was given to the High Priest by himself. Okay, that's how he was identified.
Wow. And so the great satisfaction from that, where they break down, they cry, they hug you. Wow, that had to feel so good. And as you said, most of your career, in big chunks of it anyway, you were dealing with dead victims. You were dealing with families who wanted relief, especially when you talk about Green River, because people just wanted a conclusion to those that they loved that disappeared. And it would go on and on. It was huge across TV. There were all kinds of crime alerts. What was it like to be on that task force?
Well, I started out as a homicide detective on there, and then they brought me back in after 5 months because I was a sergeant now, maybe the investigating sergeant, and I was working with, the task force consisted of about 40 detectives from 3 different police agencies and 12 FBI agents. And the FBI agents were great people. They helped us a lot because one of the reasons we asked them to join us is we were submitting evidence to the FBI crime lab in Quantico, Virginia, but we were getting a slow turnaround. So we went to the special agent in charge of the Seattle office. He understood, and he brought these 12 agencies from throughout the United States to assign them to our task force. And we got almost immediate turnarounds when we submitted it, which helped. But in the Green River thing, where Gary Ridgway was the killer, we had 48 victims. We had 4 victims that we had him solid on from DNA and enough for the death penalty. But his attorney, Tony Savage, and Norm Mailing, the prosecutor, met and they discussed it because where we could get the death penalty, Tony Savage wanted to save his client from the death penalty, so he was willing to make a deal. The deal was that he would have Ridgway confess to all the women he killed in the King County jurisdiction in exchange for waiving the death penalty. I got a call at my home from Norm Mailing, and he asked me what did I think about it. I said, well, we've got him on 4, but we got 48 victims, so we closed the case in 4 for the families, but we still got 44, 45 cases that the family would have no closure. So was he just confessing to any murder to get out of the death penalty, or is he really telling us the truth when he confesses? So we brought Ridgway. He was in our custody. He even slept in our office under the supervision of 2 detectives at all times. And he took us even to a site where he dumped a body that we hadn't even found yet. So he had to give us corroborating evidence to show that his confession was true. So that's where, so to make a long story short, Ridgway was convicted of 48 homicides. He was given 48 life sentences to run consecutively. So
wow.
I learned a lot. But one of the things is a point of interest is when Green River started, there were 5 victims, and they were found in and on the bank of the Green River. And it was the news media that gave it the name, the Green River serial murder case. And it turns out that the 48 women was the largest serial murder case in the history of the United States. Now, we're not talking about mass murder, we're talking about serial murder.
Right.
There is a difference. And we investigated this, and we had to learn how to identify the difference between animal and human bones, because this investigation was known throughout the United States and Canada. And anybody found a bone, they'd call the task force, and we'd have to go out and retrieve, take it to the medical examiner's office to say whether it was animal or human. And then if it was animal, it was disposed of so that we wouldn't get another call back on it. So we did that, and then we went to the University of Oregon, where they had a dental program, and learned how to identify certain things with the skull and the teeth. For example, except for the first 5 victims, all the other victims were skeletal remains. So we had to find the teeth, the dentals, to identify them because there was no fingerprints possible. So we had the assistance of Explorer Scouts from Boy Scouts, and we had it arranged with the schools that we had a search site. These Explorer Scouts would come out from school and they would help us search the animal trails and pick up the teeth that had fallen off the mandible as a coyote was carried into the coyote den. We would follow it right up, picking up teeth along the way, get to the coyote den and find the mandible. And we would take the mandible and the teeth that we found to the medical examiner's office, and they would reconstruct the mandible well enough that they could send out photographs and x-rays to the dentist in the United States and Canada to get an ID. And that's all the victims except one victim. We had no dental records on it anywhere, but she had a unusual break into her femur. And so we took x-ray of that and sent it to Doctors Net, and we got a positive ID on her as well. So
wow.
We saw.
And we started with talking about the story of Birthday to Die For, where that was based on. You can get that great book for a song, Kindle, paperback, however you want it. You can get that on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. Again, A Birthday to Die For. Frank Atchley, it's so great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kate.